Welcome to Thelina. Life often moves faster than we do. First, we are expected to learn, then to stand firmly on what we know. Over time, answers multiply, but questions grow quiet. At some point, we realize that we know a great deal, yet rarely pause. This series begins right there. Not to help you know more, but to help you think more deeply. Because learning is not accumulation, it is connection. Speaking is not the entirety of thought, only its visible surface. And true intellectual elegance is often shaped in silence. There is no rush here. No performance. No promise of definitive answers. This series exists to explore our relationship with knowledge, the way we carry and transform ideas, the spaces we create in communication, and the permission we give ourselves, not only to know, but also not to know. If you want to remember that you don't have to know everything. If you are willing to let thought breathe, you are welcome to stay. This journey is not for those who speak the loudest, but for those who know how to stand quietly in their place. Before we begin, if the Series 1 Create resonates with you and brings you ease, with your support we can reach many more hearts. Your subscription, likes, and comments mean more to me than you know. Thank you in advance. Now, let us begin this new journey together. 1. Learning is not accumulating, but connecting. Learning is often misunderstood. We tend to confuse collecting information with truly learning. We read, we listen, we watch, and as our minds fill up, we assume we are progressing. Yet real learning does not begin when the mind is full, but when connections start to form. The value of knowledge is not measured by how complex it is or how few people possess it. It gains meaning the moment we can connect it to another idea, an experience, or a human story. Learning is not about placing facts on mental shelves, it is about building bridges between thoughts. This is where intellectual elegance reveals itself. An elegant mind does not carry knowledge, it digests it. It approaches every new idea with quiet questions. Where does this meet what I already know? What does this illuminate in my life? What new question does this lead me to? Memorized information inflates conversation. Understood knowledge deepens it. A person who truly learns does not feel the urge to say everything they know. They understand that learning is not something to display, but something that is felt as depth. Intellectual elegance therefore includes the ability to remain silent at the right moment. Another essential aspect of learning is speed. In modern life, fast learning is praised. More content, consumed more quickly, in greater volume. Yet depth is born from slowness. An idea needs time to wander through the mind, to be lived with, revisited, and questioned. Sometimes a single sentence, heard at the right moment, can be more transformative than hundreds of pages. Because learning is not a matter of quantity, but of timing. In this series, we will approach learning not as a performance, but as a form of relationship. A relationship with knowledge, with thought, and with people, more attentive, more gentle, more profound. And perhaps most importantly, true learning does not make a person arrogant, it makes them more humble. The more connections we form, the clearer it becomes how much we do not know. This is where intellectual elegance truly begins. 2. Intellectual communication. Not impressing, but connecting. Intellectual communication often begins with a misplaced goal. To impress. To appear more knowledgeable, to build stronger arguments, to convince, or silence, the other person. Yet true intellectual communication is not about overpowering someone, it is about making contact. When ideas are presented as part of a competition, they harden. When they are shared, they deepen. In elegant intellectual communication, the goal is not to be right. The goal is to allow thought to move freely between two minds. This is why intellectual communication is not a one-way performance, but a shared space of listening. Those who think well are often those who listen well. They understand that where an idea goes is shaped not only by the speaker, but also by the listener. An unheard idea, no matter how brilliant, remains incomplete. Elegance in communication is found less in words and more in distance. Not too close, not too far. A distance that does not overwhelm, yet does not exclude. This balance allows thought to breathe. Another essential point is this: elegant communication does not require answering every question. Sometimes leaving a question open is far more valuable than closing it too quickly. Some ideas need silence in order to mature. In the modern world, quick responses are often mistaken for intelligence. Yet intellectual maturity lies in the ability to pause. Saying, "I need to think about this," is far more powerful than it appears. Intellectual communication is also a matter of intention. Is the intention to perform, or to understand? When this intention shifts, language shifts with it. Sentences soften, tone becomes simpler, and debate turns into dialogue. And perhaps the most important distinction of all: elegant intellectual communication does not make the other person feel small. On the contrary, it invites them to think. True strength lies not in silencing another, but in opening space for them. This is why intellectual elegance is not only about what we say, but about the kind of space we create. 3. Silence is the hidden partner of thought. Silence is often misunderstood. It is seen as emptiness, perceived as a lack, or associated with weakness. Yet one of the strongest components of intellectual elegance is precisely this silence. Thought deepens only when it comes into contact with quiet. Speaking is the visible face of thought. Silence is the ground in which it takes root. An elegant mind does not feel the need to fill every gap with words. It knows that some ideas, when spoken too quickly, are born prematurely. Silence gives thought the time it needs to mature. This is why true intellectual depth is often felt not in what is said, but in what is left unsaid. In the modern world, silence has become almost uncomfortable. Conversations speed up, reactions are instant, and gaps are immediately filled. Intellectual elegance, however, requires the ability to stand outside this speed. Remaining silent is a way of declaring that thought cannot be rushed. Silence is also a form of listening. When we truly listen, we do not interrupt. We stop preparing responses and begin trying to understand. This kind of silence is not passive, it is an active mental state. Intellectual elegance views silence not as withdrawal, but as creating space, for oneself and for others. Every thought needs room to exist before it can be expressed. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is the one never spoken. Sometimes silence is not about winning an argument, but about preserving a connection. Silence is closely linked to ego. Ego wants to speak, to prove its presence. An elegant mind does not rush to prove itself. Even in silence, it knows it exists. This confidence calms thought. And perhaps most importantly, silence gives rise to the questions that guide thinking. In noise, answers multiply; in silence, questions deepen. True learning and intellectual growth begin with these questions. For this reason, silence is not the enemy of thought, but its most loyal partner. Intellectual elegance lies not only in knowing when to speak, but also in knowing when to remain silent. 4. Carrying knowledge or transforming it. The way we relate to knowledge reveals who we are. Some of us carry knowledge. Others transform it. To carry knowledge is to preserve it as it is, to memorize, to transmit, to use it correctly at the right moment. This has value, of course. But intellectual elegance does not stop there. Carried knowledge eventually becomes a burden. It fills the mind without deepening it. Transforming knowledge is a different process. It means allowing knowledge to pass through us, questioning it, connecting it to our own experiences, and sometimes letting go of its original form. Transformed knowledge no longer belongs to someone else, it has changed with us. An elegant mind does not rush to present information exactly as received. It understands that the real value lies not in the information itself, but in the movement it creates within the mind. This is why intellectually deep people often quote less, yet generate more meaning. Those who carry knowledge tend to defend what is correct. Those who transform knowledge continue to explore what might be true. This difference is immediately felt in communication. Carried knowledge can turn conversation into performance. Transformed knowledge opens dialogue. It does not silence others, it invites them to think. Because transformed knowledge carries not certainty, but aliveness. Transforming knowledge requires courage. It demands confronting what we think we already know. Every new idea causes a small inner shift. An elegant mind does not avoid this disturbance, it sees it as an expansion. In the modern world, knowledge is consumed rapidly. More learning, more updates, more information. Intellectual elegance, however, sometimes chooses a deeper relationship with less. It does not want to hold ideas longer, but to live with them. And perhaps most importantly, transformed knowledge does not make a person more knowledgeable, it makes them more human. In this process, knowledge stops feeding the ego and begins to cultivate awareness. One is defined not by what they know, but by what they remain open to understanding. This is why intellectual elegance is not about increasing the weight of knowledge, but about becoming lighter with it. 5. Intellectual elegance and humility. Intellectual elegance is often misunderstood. It is assumed that as knowledge increases, a person rises, stands apart, becomes superior. Yet true elegance begins when knowledge makes the ego smaller. Humility does not mean ignorance. Nor does it mean denying what one knows or shrinking oneself. Humility is the courage to recognize the limits of one's knowledge. In an elegant intellectual stance, one thing is clear. Knowledge is not placed at the center of identity. It is not used as a tool of superiority. Because knowledge is not something we own, it is something we temporarily engage with. Those who truly think are often confident yet unassuming. They do not feel the need to constantly prove themselves. They do not insist on having the final word. Their sense of worth is not dependent on approval. Humility softens intellectual communication. Being able to say, "I don't know, I might be wrong," or "my view isn't clear yet," is not weakness, it is a sign of intellectual maturity. There is a fine line between knowledge and arrogance. That line is defined by the meaning we assign to knowledge. When knowledge becomes part of identity, it must be defended. When it is seen as a learning process, every new question becomes an invitation. Intellectual elegance appears precisely here, not in protecting what we know, but in remaining open to understanding. A humble mind is not disturbed by another's perspective. It sees difference not as a threat, but as expansion. This is why intellectual elegance often carries a quiet confidence. And perhaps most importantly, humility does not diminish a person, it places them correctly. Not above, not below. Simply where they belong. 6. The weight of knowing and the lightness of not knowing. Knowing does not always make us lighter. Some knowledge places an invisible weight on our shoulders, greater awareness, greater responsibility, greater mental effort. This is where the burden of knowing begins. An elegant mind does not deny this weight. But it does not collapse under it either. The burden of knowing comes from the pressure to have answers, to hold opinions on everything, to resolve every question. Intellectual elegance begins by accepting the limits of knowledge. The lightness of not knowing is not indifference. It is mental spaciousness. Being able to say, "I don't know yet," releases thought. Not everything needs immediate clarity. Some questions gain meaning only with time. In the modern world, uncertainty is uncomfortable. Quick answers and firm positions are rewarded. Yet intellectual maturity lies in the ability to remain with uncertainty, to sit with thoughts that have not yet formed. The burden of knowing grows heavier with ego. The lightness of not knowing begins where ego softens. An elegant mind relaxes when it lets go of the need to control everything. Knowing is a skill, but so is letting go. Not knowing keeps curiosity alive. Certainty closes thought, uncertainty keeps it open. Those who continue to learn do not hide what they don't know, they walk alongside it. And perhaps the greatest freedom of all is this: realizing that you do not have to know everything. Intellectual elegance is not about carrying the weight of knowledge, but about knowing when to set it down. In that moment, the mind becomes lighter, thought can breathe, and learning becomes possible again. In this series, we did not try to find answers to every question, because some answers cannot be rushed. Together, we remembered that learning is not a competition, that knowledge can become a burden, that silence nourishes thought, and that elegance often walks hand in hand with humility. If, during this journey, you felt less of an urge to speak, more space to think, or even a small moment of pause, then it has fulfilled its purpose. Intellectual elegance is not about what you know, but about the space you create. Knowledge passes, thought changes, but a mind that stands firmly in its place is always remembered. Remember this: life is whispering to you. When you dare to listen to your heart, paths begin to open. Until our next meeting, stay with the light in your heart. I am Thelina, a fellow traveler walking toward the same dream, under the same sky, with you.